Hello and welcome to this second tutorial in the series where I'll go through my process of creating this squid house for my world building project. This part is going to focus on the interior view of the house, and if you'd like to check out how the exterior view was made, feel free to check out my other video where I also explain a bit more about the project itself. But let's jump into the interior. My goal with this drawing is to create a space for a family that has everything they need for their daily life and also clearly shows the design of each floor in the house. This can be tricky to do in one view, especially in a tall house like this where the floors are overlapping each other. So the way I want to do this is to show a cutout view, sort of like these references I have up on the screen here, and basically remove any parts that overlap important areas that I want to show. It's really important to think about where you're placing the objects in the drawing to make sure that nothing is going to be covered by what's on top. And that's exactly why the first thing I want to do is to set up the camera in 3D. So I can constantly check that everything looks good from that angle and that nothing important is going to be covered up. And a lot of this will be a continuation of the first video. So as you can see, I already have the 3D model of the house generally blocked out, which I'm going to build upon for the interior view. While doing the exterior view, I already tried to make sure that the floor plan would roughly make sense and that there would be enough space for a family to live in the house. Because it would really start getting to this stage of the drawing and after doing the exterior and realizing that the interior is not really going to work. As I explained in the last video, I'm using the free Sketchfab plugin for Blender to import ready-made assets to quickly experiment with what objects to include and where to place them, which is super helpful. When using this plugin, just make sure to keep an eye on the sizes of the models that you import, as some models are super heavy and a simple low poly version is usually good enough. Since I'm using it just as a reference to draw over. So I don't want to end up with a super large scene that's going to take me half an hour to load and crash Blender. I want to design the house for a family of 4, possibly 2 kids and 2 adults. They're going to need some place to sleep and eat, and a living room and somewhere to prepare food and have some storage. And it would make sense to keep the most used areas near the bottom of the house, since you would have to constantly go up and down ladders to get to the rooms higher up, which would be really annoying. So this floor I want to be the living room, so what that definitely needs to include is a table for everyone to sit and eat, some chairs and maybe a cozy fireplace. It would be pretty impractical though to have the chimney go all the way from the fireplace to the top of the house, so the smoke would just be let out directly in the back instead. So I'm thinking to keep the kitchen and living room on the first floors and the bedrooms higher up. And I want to have 2 bedrooms, one for the kids and one for the adults. And it would probably make sense to have the kids' bedroom higher up, as the building has more space around the middle and gets more narrow around the top and the bottom floors. And the kids maybe wouldn't need as much space and has more energy as well to go up and down ladders all the time. I've already established in the exterior view that there is this chimney-like opening on the top of the house. And I want to maybe place a fireplace on that top floor. There's not that much space, so it could be this little cozy area where you can sit around the fire and you have a lot of ventilation as well from the opening on the sides. On the exterior view of the house in the previous tutorial, you can see that the family sells fish. So the kitchen would be where they prepare their freshly caught fish to sell. So I'm thinking of placing a lot of boxes with fish and maybe even having huge fish hanging from the ceiling. I also want to include some characters, so we could have someone here chopping some fish maybe. Since the lower bedroom has more space, I can place 2 beds next to each other on the floor. And in the kids' bedroom, where there's less space, I'll place the beds on top of each other. The bedrooms can be kept quite simple and used for some storage as well. Here I'm finding some fish models from Sketchfab to hang from the ceiling in the kitchen, ready for chopping. Since the people living here catches and sell fish, it would be fun if in the living room they had the wall full of trophies of their most proud catches, maybe going back for generations in the family. So the kids would see these amazing and rare fish on display on the wall and get inspired to one day go out and catch a fish that is worthy to put next to them. I'll just put some placeholders for now. I found this model with a dinosaur head, which isn't quite what we're going for, but I'm gonna draw over it anyways. I'm constantly checking my camera view and judging everything that I place based on that. And it's really tricky placing the ladders going between each floor, since they take up quite a bit of space and need to be placed so they're also accessible. And I want them placed differently on each floor to have some variation. At this point I'm happy with the overall blocking of the floors, so I'll move into the line art phase. All the small details are going to be much faster to just do in 2D later, so I'll leave that for now until I've drawn more of the structure and the bigger objects. And like in the last tutorial, my main focus here is the line quality. So it's nice to have a good base to work on, so I don't need to worry much about the design. I don't want to draw every single line completely since it will look too busy, so I'll leave some gaps here and there. Since the top part is no longer covered, I have to show very clearly how the design works here. So the basic idea is that this large stick holding the fabric can be opened or closed for the night, or if it's really cold or windy. So I'm trying to design how the sticks are attached to the top, and I'll actually just do a simple model quick in Blender to make it easier for me. There are 2 pairs of sticks, one on each side, each connecting with rope to a wheel, with another rope from the wheel going down that can be pulled to raise the sticks if they're closed. The other end of the stick has a rope connected to a wheel to close the sticks when needed, which I will draw in later. It's really important that you spend the time to properly design these small details, as it helps a lot to make the design believable. Now I'll start drawing up the kitchen and work up the house one floor at a time. I'm getting as much as the simple drawing over 3D objects done as I can first, and then I can move on to the more interesting details and smaller objects. I'll make a circular hole for the ladders on each floor because the general shape language of the building is very curvy and round, so I want to emphasize that. I've drawn in all the floors completely for now, but later I'll decide which parts to remove in order to not cover up anything below and to get that nice cutout style that we saw in the beginning. Moving on to the living room, I'm adding some plates and jugs to the dinner table just to give it some more life. And I'm not looking to overly detail any parts of the interior, but just to give an overall good idea of what each room is used for. So in case that it was done in a production, this could be done fast. And if it was decided to continue with this overall design, I could focus in more detailed on each room and really flesh that out. For the fireplace, I want to go for this very rough looking stone fireplace built by Big Stones. And for the trophies on the fish on the wall, I think it would be really fun to have one of these big swordfish and then a lot of smaller heads hung around it. So here I'm just having some fun drawing some of these in. I'm keeping the adult's bedroom quite simple, just adding in a shelf with some various objects, some books, plates, boxes and so on. And since the kids' beds are stacked on top of each other, some of the spare room could be used for storage. So I'll put in some barrels and boxes here. They probably only use this room for sleeping anyways, and it's pretty tall up in the house, so they're not gonna go there often. So I'm thinking it's fine that it's a little bit messy. And the top room is also not somewhere I would imagine them going up to that often, but maybe in the evening to relax around the fire with some nice food. So I'll also add in some pillows that they can sit on. And I'll just finish drawing the mechanism for opening and closing the balconies as well. And now there's just the bottom floor or the entrance left, which I'll keep nice and simple. At this point I focus in on more details like characters and touching up areas here and there. So we need a guy that's cutting up some fish in the kitchen that they're gonna sell or eat. And up here we can have a kid hanging out on his bed. For color, the process is similar to the last tutorial of the outside view. I start by blocking in all the separate objects, and I don't really care what color they have in this stage. It's all about blocking it in, so I can lock the layers, and then later I can focus on painting the actual colors and the details that I want. So we'll skip a bit through this process. To get the shadows, I set up a light in Blender and I move it around until I get it in a position that works for me. I'm looking for having some shadows on each floor and some nice shapes of light and shadows, but not so much that it covers things that I want to show off. This is probably something that I should have figured out way earlier, since the style has completely black shadows and it might be difficult to not cover up important objects. But I managed to find a decent angle, so I render out a shadow pass from Blender to use as a base for the shadows in Photoshop. Some objects are covered too much in shadows, so I'll have to cheat a bit to make them visible anyway. Now we'll just go over all the shadows and add and remove. For example, the boxes on the kitchen floor are covered in shadow, so I'll bring that color layer on top of the shadows so we can see. After this process is done, I'll continue painting in colors, and like I mentioned in the last tutorial, I want to keep everything really simple and readable. So I'm trying just to use as few colors in each object as possible and not going too realistic. For the most part, a simple base color with a few strokes of another very similar color is enough to give it a nice look. And that's pretty much it for the coloring, and at this stage the drawing is ready to be put on a sheet for some nice presentation. In my case I put it on the sheet together with the exterior view, so I have a full design sheet of the building, and I'll add in some small extra drawings explaining the opening and the closing mechanism of the balconies, and maybe write a few notes here and there just to sell the design a little bit more and also provide some additional information. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and maybe learned a thing or two as well. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you wanted to like the video. And if you have any comments or feedback or anything else you'd like me to do a tutorial on, please let me know in the comments section. And thank you so much for watching, and see you next time. Bye.